The void between stars stretched endlessly, broken only by the faint glow of distant suns. In this cosmic emptiness, 3 sleek vessels drifted like silver needles through the dark Zarkalian scout ships, their hulls gleaming with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with their crew's heartbeats. Scout Commander Thexvar adjusted his sensory crown, the crystalline spikes along his skull flaring with neural activity. His elongated fingers danced across the control matrix, each touch sending ripples of light through the organic interface. "Sector scan complete," he announced, his voice carrying the melodic undertones of his species. "No registered civilizations within 3 parsecs." The bridge of the whispered dream hummed with quiet efficiency. Zarkalian technology had evolved beyond crude metals and circuits. Their ships were grown, not built, living extensions of their crew's collective consciousness. The walls pulsed with a soft amber glow, veins of light carrying information like blood through arteries. Wait, Thexvar's secondary eyes dilated as his instruments detected something unexpected. "There's a signal emanating from the 3rd system. Structured patterns, deliberate transmission bursts. This isn't natural stellar radiation." His navigation officer, a young Zarkalian named Crixtel, leaned forward with interest. Her cranial ridges flickered with curiosity. "Could be automated probes from the Centauri Collective. They've been expanding their exploration grid." "No, this is different." Thexvar's voice carried a note of concern. "The mathematical progressions are too primitive, too crude. It's like finding cave paintings in a quantum research facility." The 3 scout ships adjusted their course, their living hulls rippling as they changed direction. The signals grew stronger as they approached the system's outer edge, revealing a small yellow star surrounded by several rocky planets. One world, the 3rd from the star, blazed with electromagnetic activity. "Primitive radio waves," Crixtel reported with barely concealed disdain. "They're still using electromagnetic spectrum communication." "How quaint." Thexvar studied the readouts with growing interest. The planet showed signs of a Type 0.7 civilization barely capable of interplanetary travel, certainly no threat to the Zarkalian Empire. But something about the signal patterns nagged at him, a complexity hidden beneath the crude transmission methods. "Take us to the system's edge," he commanded. "Standard first contact protocols. We'll observe from a safe distance, catalog their development level, and report back to the hegemony." The scout ships slipped deeper into the system, their stealth fields bending light around them like water around stones. As they approached the 3rd planet, their sensors revealed a world teeming with activity, cities that glowed against the night side, orbital installations that sparkled like jewels in the void. "Impressive for their development level," Crixtel admitted reluctantly. "They've managed to establish a rudimentary orbital infrastructure. Primitive but functional." Thexvar nodded absently, his attention focused on the energy readings streaming across his displays. The orbital installations were generating significant power, far more than necessary for a pre-TTL civilization. His unease grew as he noticed the geometric precision of the structures, the way they were positioned for optimal coverage of approach vectors. "Scout Commander," his weapons officer called out, his voice tight with concern. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the outer system. Multiple contacts, bearing 270 Mark 15. The bridge fell silent except for the soft whisper of the ship's biological systems. Thexvar's primary eyes focused on the tactical display while his secondary pair monitored the crew's reactions. Fear scent filled the air, a sweet, metallic aroma that made his skin crawl. "Clarify massive," he ordered, his voice steady despite the growing tension. 37 vessels, Scout Commander, each one reading at minimum battle cruiser mass. They're dropping out of faster than light travel." Thexvar's blood ran cold. These primitives weren't supposed to have TTL capability. His databases showed no record of this species achieving interstellar travel. Yet here they were, emerging from warp space with the casual confidence of an advanced civilization. The human ships materialized from the void like nightmares given form. Unlike the flowing, organic curves of Zarkalian vessels, these craft were angular brutality made manifest, dark plates of unknown metal arranged in geometric patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with predatory grace, their formations shifting like schools of mechanical sharks. "By the eternal void," Crixtel whispered, her cranial ridges flashing with alarm. "What are those things?" The human fleet spread out in a complex pattern, their ships maintaining perfect spacing as they advanced deeper into the system. Each vessel was unique, some bristling with weapon arrays, others smooth as death itself. They moved without the graceful curves of Zarkalian bioships, instead cutting through space with mechanical precision. They're scanning us, the sensor officer reported, his voice barely audible. Active sensors, multiple frequencies. Very thorough. Thexvar felt sweat beading on his scaled skin. These weren't the clumsy radio builders his initial scans had suggested. These were warriors, and their ships radiated menace like heat from a forge. The dark hulls seemed to drink in starlight, leaving only shadows where vessels should be. "Hail them," he ordered, his voice cracking slightly. Standard diplomatic frequency. The communications officer's hands trembled as he activated the transmission array. "Channel open, Scout Commander, broadcasting on all known frequencies." Silence answered them, not the empty quiet of space, but the loaded silence of a predator choosing its moment to strike. The human ships continued their advance, their formations flowing like liquid metal through the void. "Perhaps they don't understand our transmission protocols," Crixtel suggested weakly. "Their technology appears different." Thexvar studied the approaching fleet with growing dread. The ships looked like they'd been built for war, not the elegant displays of power common to civilized species, but tools designed for maximum destruction. Their angular hulls were scarred with what looked like battle damage, and their weapon arrays were openly displayed rather than hidden behind retractable panels. "They're not responding to our hails," he reported to his crew. "Tactical assessment?" His weapons officer's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "Unknown armor composition, Scout Commander. Energy signatures suggest power generation capabilities far beyond what their development level should allow. I'm reading reactor outputs that match our own dreadnoughts." The lead human vessel, a massive angular beast that dwarfed the Zarkalian scouts, suddenly altered course. It turned toward them with deliberate slowness, its black hull gleaming with malevolent intent. Along its flanks, weapon ports opened like eyes waking from sleep. "They see us," Thexvar stated unnecessarily. "They know we're here." The human ship hung in space before them, a mountain of metal and malice. Its surface was covered in script, not the flowing curves of civilized writing, but harsh angular symbols that seemed to cut the eye. Warning lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that spoke of barely contained violence. "Scout Commander," the communications officer said suddenly, his voice filled with excitement and terror in equal measure. "They're transmitting multiple channels, multiple languages. I'm detecting. This is impossible. They're using languages that predate their radio signals by millennia." The transmission crackled through the bridge speakers, not the melodic tones of Zarkalian speech, but harsh, guttural sounds that seemed to carry weight beyond their meaning. The words were ancient, primal, speaking of concepts that civilized species had long abandoned. "What are they saying?" Thexvar demanded. "The translation matrix is struggling, Scout Commander. The root languages are primitive, violent. They're speaking of dominion, of conquest. And," the officer's voice dropped to a whisper, "they're speaking directly into our minds." A new voice cut through the transmission, not heard, but felt. It bypassed their audio receptors entirely, speaking directly to their consciousness with the cold precision of a blade. The words formed in their minds like ice crystals, each one sharp and inescapable. "We are the inheritors of fire and steel. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us. We are humanity. You will withdraw, or you will learn why the galaxy fears to wake us." The Zarkalian bridge fell silent, except for the terrified breathing of the crew. Thexvar felt his secondary heart skip beats as the telepathic message resonated through his skull. These weren't primitive radio builders, they were something far more dangerous. "Impossible," he breathed. "They're a pre-TTL species. Our databases show no record of telepathic capability." The human ship suddenly erupted with activity. Along its hull, sections retracted to reveal weapon arrays that gleamed like polished obsidian. The targeting systems locked onto the Zarkalian scouts with mechanical precision, their sensors painting the alien vessels with invisible beams of death. "They're powering weapons," the tactical officer reported unnecessarily. "Energy buildup beyond anything in our databases. Scout Commander, we need to retreat." But Thexvar found himself paralyzed by the sight of the human fleet. They hung in space like vultures, their dark hulls absorbing light until they seemed like holes cut in reality itself. Their weapons were crude compared to Zarkalian biotechnology, but they radiated menace like heat from a star. "This is impossible," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're supposed to be primitive. Our intelligence reports are wrong." A new voice interrupted. This one came through conventional audio channels, speaking in perfectly accented Zarkalian. The voice was calm, measured, and utterly without mercy. Your intelligence reports are very wrong. The transmission originated from a ship that had somehow moved closer without being detected, a smaller vessel, sleeker than the others, its hull marked with symbols that seemed to shift and change when observed directly. It hung beside the Zarkalian scouts like a spider beside FLIs. I am Commander Idris Valen of the Terran Defense Fleet, the voice continued. You are trespassing in human space. This is not a negotiation. Before Thexvar could respond, the human ship fired. Not a warning shot or a display of force, but a precisely targeted beam that struck the scout ship Gentle Current amidships. The Zarkalian vessel simply stopped. Its bioluminescent patterns flickered once and died, its living hull going dark as its consciousness was severed. Gravlance, Crixtel whispered in horror. They're using gravity as a weapon. The human fleet began to move, their formations flowing like liquid death through the void. They didn't advance in the precise ranks common to civilized warfare, but in hunting packs, some ships diving high, others sweeping low, all of them converging on the Zarkalian position with predatory intent. Emergency transmission to Fleet Command, Thexvar ordered, his voice cracking with panic. Code Crimson. Unknown hostile species, advanced technology, immediate reinforcement required. But even as he spoke, he knew it was too late. The human ships were already among them, their weapons firing with mechanical precision. The Zarkalian scouts, built for exploration and diplomacy, were no match for vessels designed for war. Scout Commander, his communications officer called out, the humans are jamming our transmissions. We can't reach Fleet Command. Thexvar watched in horror as the human ships surrounded his remaining vessels. They moved with the coordinated precision of a hive mind, each craft perfectly aware of its companions' positions. Their weapons fire was surgical, disabling rather than destroying. They wanted prisoners. They've been watching us, he realized with growing dread. They know our capabilities, our weaknesses. This isn't first contact, it's a trap. The human commander's voice returned, still calm and measured despite the violence unfolding around them. You came looking for primitives. You found us instead. Consider this a learning experience. A new ship appeared from the human fleet, larger than the others, its hull covered in weapons that spoke of battles fought and won. It moved with the confidence of a predator that had never known defeat, its approach measured and deliberate. That's a dreadnought, Crixtel breathed. But it's not in any of our databases. How did they build something like that without us knowing? The human dreadnought settled into position above the Zarkalian scouts, its massive bulk blocking out the stars. Along its hull, script glowed with inner fire, not the elegant curves of civilized writing, but harsh symbols that seemed to speak of violence and victory. Your databases are incomplete. Commander Valen's voice carried a note of grim amusement. You've been watching the wrong species. The dreadnought's weapon ports opened like flowering death, revealing arrays that made the smaller ship's armaments look like toys. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the Zarkalian sensors could measure, and the very space around the vessel seemed to bend and warp. We surrender, Thexvar transmitted desperately. We are peaceful explorers. We meant no harm. Peaceful explorers don't bring weapons to first contact, Valen replied. Your ships are armed. Your crews are military. You came here to evaluate a potential threat. You found one. The human fleet began to move again, their formations shifting like a living thing. They surrounded the Zarkalian scouts completely, their dark hulls creating a cage of metal and malice. Escape was impossible even if their engines worked. The humans had demonstrated speed and maneuverability that exceeded Zarkalian capabilities. What do you want? Thexvar asked, his voice breaking with desperation. We want you to go home, Valen replied. We want you to tell your people what you found here. We want you to spread the word that humanity is not to be underestimated. The human ships began to withdraw, their movements as coordinated as their approach had been. But they didn't disappear, they simply faded back into the darkness, becoming one with the void. Only their energy signatures remained, like the lingering scent of a predator. This is not over, Thexvar transmitted, trying to salvage some dignity from the encounter. Yes, it is, Valen replied. You're going to return to your people. You're going to tell them about this encounter. And if they're smart, they'll mark this system as restricted space. The human fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only the disabled Zarkalian scouts drifting in the void. Thexvar stared at the empty space where the dreadnought had been, his mind struggling to process what had just occurred. They let us go, Crixtel said in disbelief. They could have destroyed us, but they let us go. They didn't let us go, Thexvar corrected grimly. They're sending us home as messengers. They want the hegemony to know what they found here. The remaining scout ships limped away from the human system, their crews shaken and demoralized. Behind them, the third planet continued its rotation, its cities gleaming against the night side like jewels scattered across dark velvet. "Scout Commander," the communications officer said quietly, "I'm detecting new transmissions from the human fleet." They're laughing. Thexvar felt his skin crawl at the implications. These weren't the desperate defenders of a primitive world, they were confident warriors who had just delivered a message. The laughter echoing through space spoke of a species that had found their encounter amusing rather than threatening. "Set course for home," he ordered. "Emergency speed. The hegemony needs to know what we've found here." As the Zarkalian scouts fled toward their home system, new contacts appeared on their sensors, more human ships, emerging from what had seemed like empty space. They'd been surrounded from the beginning, their every move monitored and analyzed. "How many of them are there?" Crixtel whispered. "Enough," Thexvar replied grimly. "More than enough." The journey home passed in stunned silence, the crew struggling to process their encounter with humanity. They'd been outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outhought by a species their databases classified as primitive. The implications were staggering. Upon reaching Zarkalian space, Thexvar transmitted his report directly to Fleet Command. The response was immediate and overwhelming: disbelief, followed by alarm, followed by the activation of emergency protocols that hadn't been used in centuries. "They're mobilizing the entire defense fleet," Crixtel reported, monitoring the military channels. "Every ship, every station. They're treating this as a potential invasion." "They should," Thexvar replied. "We've awakened something that was better left sleeping." The Zarkalian hegemony's response was swift and decisive. Within hours, the largest military force in their history was assembled and dispatched toward human space. They would not be caught off guard again, but as the armada departed, Thexvar couldn't shake the memory of Commander Valen's voice, calm, measured, and utterly without fear. The humans had known the Zarkalians would return in force. They'd been counting on it. "This isn't over," he whispered to himself, staring out at the stars. "It's just beginning." The void between stars stretched endlessly, waiting for the next act in a drama that would reshape the galaxy. In the distance, human ships moved through the darkness, their crews preparing for what was to come. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.